Yes, so BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. Now there has been debate on whether M should stand for modeling or management, because are we managing building information or are we modeling building information? And I think everyone has just agreed that they should stand for both because they're both modeling and managing. So it is a system of basically creating a life cycle product. The building is something that goes on even beyond the lifespan of the architect in many cases. And what happens is you start building with one team, you manage the building with a different team, and when it's time for the building to expire or be demolished, as we say, you're sort of trying to get a hold of where your asset is. The building is an asset in financial terms. So you want a way to have a full life cycle information for your assets if you are the owner. You want the architect drawings to be in your custody. You want the building in use that he has built in this case to be in your custody. You want to know everything about building throughout its life cycle. And BIM is the most, let's say, sensible way to do it, because every other way would just result in a lot of information that you can't really piece together. And even in BIM, we're still sort of teasing it out. We're still defining things like level of information need and so on, and how much information should the building really store in its database. So BIM is, to put it in the simplest terms, what you're doing with CAD, you are creating information that is geometric. When you're creating that same information with the BIM process, you are adding layers to it. So you have the geometry, you have the information, you have the schedule, you have the cost, you have the materials. Everything is in one place. Anyone can access that information, even if you are not directly available on the project. Your consultants can access the information they need. You can access the information from your consultants. Now, one of the things I know that people struggle with a lot is they have a drawing that works on paper, they've coordinated it and it works on paper, and yet somehow when you're on site, it doesn't work. And you've wasted all that time, all those meetings, all those tea and coffee breaks, and you're on site and it's not working. You could have done that simulation in a BIM environment and saved yourself the hassle. So it's, to be honest, not going in the way of BIM, or even more significantly having like an integrated project delivery workflow, is a waste of money. People always think about the initial cost of getting the software or getting the tools, but you're wasting more money when you get on site and you find out that the wall can't be there or the column can't be there because something somewhere isn't synchronizing. You wasted money, but you don't think of it that way. You're thinking about what you're spending initially. And with all things, I think computation in all fields, maybe just not even architecture or in AEC space, you spend more time and money on the front end, like it's front loaded, and then you save money down the line. But in our economy, our culture, we just want everything to be so frugal at the early stages, and we're not counting the cost that comes at the end. And I think one thing that would be great is if clients themselves can start to see the benefits of them, they will not accept CAD on any project because they bear the cost of these mistakes. They just don't know it. Right, that's a good question, because I know that one of the biggest problems people have with moving to BIM, and I actually shy away from using the word BIM too often, because I think it has come to denote something difficult and scary and unreachable, as opposed to something that is the natural progression. So there's a reason why we aren't drawing with pencils and tables anymore, because it was natural progression to say, okay, this is faster. We can duplicate our information, we can a lot more than we can do with hand drawings. And now we're saying, actually, doing CAD is slower. If you're able to set up your BIM properly, you get more out of it, times over, be able to set standards and not basically rely on the individual working on the project. Because I know that that's one of the biggest challenges for teams, is having a standard that is not depending on the person who started the project. And so when people hear BIM, it just seems like this new stressful thing that they're not quite ready to take on. Oh, it's too expensive. It's actually the natural progression. I think it's not a question of if people will move from CAD to BIM, but when. Because I don't know anyone who has made the switch that regretted it or felt it was a waste or regrets it back. And it's not to say CAD isn't important. It's just the less efficient way to go about certain things, especially in the line of work that we do. You could decide to just be stubborn and continue working in your typical kind of workflow, but you'll be doing yourself a disservice. That's just what it is. Well, specializing in BIM happened kind of like an accident. I'd say I was very fortunate to have interviewed here at ATO Architects. So I had already done research, like I said in the article, I had done research on BIM, and the research took me on a very deep technical path that initially I was actually scared I would not be able to use that knowledge in practice. I always had that feeling, and yet somehow when I interviewed for ATO, I was interviewing for the role of an architect. I just believed there were no BIM managers in Nigeria to begin with. But surprisingly, he told me that, actually that they were looking to hire a BIM manager specifically to do that job. By the time I finished talking about what I learned in school, the research I had done, he offered me, that's ATO I'm speaking about now, offered me the position to be a BIM manager. And it was a no-brainer because it was what I had always wanted to do. It was like the natural progression for the research I had already done. I guess I just didn't think it was possible. So it just goes to show that sometimes we are our own limitation. I guess I always say the desire to share knowledge comes from the desire to get knowledge, because the best way to learn is to teach actually. I don't know anyone who's really interested in consuming insane amounts of information who also doesn't simultaneously like to share that information. I mean, we all know we all have those lecturers that like to go on and on. It's a way of kind of consolidating the knowledge. So in a way, the desire to share comes from the desire to know. So it's like a feedback loop in a way. Okay, so ATO Studios existed before I even joined the company. It's a dream of the parent company ATO Architects to champion education, continuing education for students and also training for professionals. So we're looking to help people that are just coming out of school. There's always a noticeable gap between what they've learned in school and what they need to apply in practice. And so the ATO Studios is an idea to sort of help them with that gap, like a finishing school of some sorts, to get them ready for what they do need to use in practice. And then for professionals who are already working with the aspects of your trade that you're not so good at. Because the thing about architecture is by the time you get into proper practice, you actually realize you cannot learn everything in school. It's just not possible. You need to be on projects to learn as much as you need to learn, and that's kind of why it's a requirement for licensure. So in order not to sort of deviate from the focus of ATO Architects, which is still an architecture and project management company, we are basically moving that focus of pioneering digital disruption to ATO students. So we want to train people on how to use certain tools. We want to train students on what's latest in technology. We don't want to deviate from the focus of the core arm of the firm, which is on making buildings and designing and making buildings. So ATO Studios became that umbrella where we can sort of experiment with emerging tech, do 3D printing, do all the new fancy cool stuff that the timeline and or budget for an actual project may not allow for. So it's a kind of R&D in a way, so that when we're ready to apply that knowledge on the project, we're able to do that. And also do the training aspects, which is what we are championing now with the construction documentation training happening next week. So in that way, we'll be teaching people, a lot of people learn Revit kind of all over the place. So we're going to teach you, everyone facilitating the training is an Autodesk certified professional. So we're going to teach you the way Revit designed it, and probably show you one of the things you were not aware you could do. And then we'll go through the process from start to finish for a standard architecture and MEP project. So one of the amazing things we're also going to expose is how to collaborate with your MEP consultants in a BIM environment. So if you're having, I feel when you do it, you start demanding your MEP consultants to give you their work in BIM, because you start to see all the things you could save time on if you're just collaborating in that environment. So yeah, I'm sure I deviated from the original question, but yeah, ATO Studios is the aspect of the overall company that focuses on learning, education, trying new things, and basically leading from the front by experimentation. I believe it's two ways. So, from experience, both personal and from my colleagues, because we're usually partnering with another company called Blaze Academy, who have been doing trainings much longer than we have. From experience, architects believe they already know everything there is to know. Maybe typically because they initiate the project. I don't know what it is, but most architects have an attitude towards self-education, where they kind of have already gone on all the platforms available and learned what they think they need to learn. And so we noticed that the gap was more with other consultants in the industry, so the MEP engineers and structural engineers. Even in our own practice, like the ATO Architects practice, we still have more challenges getting BIM models out of our engineers than, say, if we were to collaborate with another architectural company. So the gap was identified more with engineers. We're still catering to architects as well, but the gap in the market, we believe, is more on the side of the engineers. So that's why we're trying to, like I said, do as much